Marshal Chopra mentioned the drones. We really need to be self-sufficient in drone technology. There are many key components that are still imported. But now we come to the elephant in the room, Gaurav. And this is a topic that you've been talking about passionately. It's a DRDO, restructuring, reforming the DRDO. And we are being told that a Government of India appointed committee, the Vijay Raghavan committee, has submitted its recommendations to the government, where they've suggested sweeping changes across the DRDO, restructuring it, creating a DTC, Defense Technology Commission, under the Prime Minister's office. Do you believe that this is the road to change, or is it going to be just like one of those other committees that just came by and gave its recommendations, nobody implemented it? We all know what's to be done, it's never done. Do you think this is going to change now?
There's an old joke, Sandeep, that a camel is a horse made by a committee. So essentially, whether it is the Abdul Kalam committee or whether it's, there are so many committees.
Right.
You're in the same kind of geopolitics, foreign affairs and national security business that I am in terms of reading, in terms of analyzing, and unless it is implemented, these sweeping changes and one or two things that they have said, which a lot of us have been saying for a long time, get out of production.
Right, absolutely.
Get into hardcore R&D.
Yeah.
You guys are R&D specialists.
Yeah.
Do that. Also, the age profile of scientists was one pointer.
Yes.
They said that, the age profile is very old. So go and tap into young scientists,
lateral entrance,
lateral entries.
Get into universities
and I think one other thing is that, I was speaking to these Israeli people and they said one thing which I found very interesting. They said that you don't know where the corporate starts and the Israeli armed forces, the IDF
they're
finishes.
Also integrated.
They're so integrated, and that is where it comes from actually.
Right.
That is where here. If the government let go, it would be a major boon, right?
Right.
Please, for heaven's sake, let go.
Right.
Let go. And let the private industry take over. In America, they're making the aircraft carriers are made by private partners.
Oh yes, that's a military-industrial complex.
That's a military-industrial complex, and this is exactly what you need.
Right.
There are people in the private sector. I was talking to somebody,
right.
I'll not mention the name of the company. You manufacture rifles.
Yes.
And this was 4 or 5 years back, so much would have changed. But the fact is that where do you get the ammunition to test it, and then you're dependent upon somebody for the firing range, and then you go. These are small little things. You're manufacturing a grenade. You're dependent upon a government agency
for testing.
For testing. It should be there within your compound. You do what you wish. Come out.
Right.
You see, and the government can say that, hey, the 3 of you work on a patent, or I beg your pardon, 3 of you work on a product, and if we like the product, we'll fund it.
Right.
So that's how it happens everywhere, and they even fund R&D.
Yes.
Here the problem is, I think the government needs to let go.
Right, the government needs to let go. In fact, and Gaurav, there are very bright examples of how government agencies function. Like DARPA is one classic example. We keep talking about it. So it works in such a very small footprint. There are just a couple of dozen people who run the whole show. They're just basically program management. They're developing technology in concert with industry. But Ashok, I want to ask you this. This is a oft-reported, discussed example, DARPA versus DRDO. Why is DRDO designing assault rifles, whereas it should be looking at cutting-edge technologies like, counter-drone systems and all that? What do you think of this new report that's been submitted to the government, or the Vijay Raghavan committee report? What is it that you would see the DRDO do that will actually enable the private industry to step up and, in the years ahead, create that military-industrial complex?
I think, if you look at even, we're talking about America, we look at the rocket program that they had. For 40 years, they were not doing anything. And who were doing all the rocket research, with NASA? The two companies, Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Do you know what are the strength of the rocket programs? The number of people who were employed in that, 50,000 people.
Right.
And they were not, what was the thing they were working on? Cost plus model. And would they wanted this project to ever finish? No, they would not want to finish.
Right.
This is exactly what Elon Musk, you must read Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. In that they say, Elon Musk went and said, listen, pay me if my rocket flies, otherwise don't pay me.
Yes.
And that was the thing. That's similar to our the surprise that, I didn't even know that they did that.
Right.
And, Elon Musk was able to fly the rockets with 500 employees.
Right.
100 the strength of that, 1% of the strength. Now the whole thing is, so one thing is, I think DRDO has done a tremendous job.
Yeah.
And they're extremely bright people. The Pareto may be 595, not the 2080, but they are extremely bright people. We should ensure that this accumulated wisdom that is within DRDO is not lost in our our let go kind of thing.
Yes.
We should retain the talent, maybe, but it should be finally the private company that should say, if I develop this, give me the money. Otherwise, you don't have to pay, like Make2. I think all the projects will go online. Maybe very large project somewhere, you need a program management team. But, again, the program management is not I'm the Lord of the Rings kind of a guys. These guys should be facilitating guys. The people who are willing to help, and they should feel that, listen, I have to help private companies to achieve this.
Right.
They should not be saying that DGPA wala hai, you're not qualifying and all that. You can make life very difficult also.
Right.
But if they're really, really cooperative, I think we are on the cusp of absolutely becoming in the world's absolute, I think it will be in the top 3 without any doubt if this is implemented.
Absolutely. That's a sentiment that's been echoed often, Marshal Chopra, that we could be the arsenal to the world, given our competitive edge in manufacturing. But what is it that you see the DRDO, based on this report, what structure do you envisage for the DRDO in the years ahead? Should it just focus on those core critical technologies, strategic systems, for instance, and get out of all the run-of-the-mill things which the private sector can do beautifully well, much better than any government organization? What's your view on this?
Sandeep, there was a DRDO committee called Ramarao Committee 2008.
Yes, 10 years back, 15 years.
Yes. And, I must tell you, even if half of it had been implemented, you wouldn't have had to have another DRDO committee set up. Right. But unfortunately, not much happened. It gathered dust. And we sincerely hope that the new committee report, I have been interacting with the people who have been on the committee, and we have a good idea. They've given some great recommendations. Surely, we have to, the number of labs the DRDO currently has, the areas they are into, they have to cut down. Why should they be getting into flying clothing? Why should we be getting into so many other areas? So some 4 areas, 4 or 5 groups of areas that DRDO must look at. As far as what Gaurav was saying, the DARPA and the American labs, I must tell you that Army, Navy, Air Force in US have got their own labs, so that they are the ones who are interfacing all the time between the DRDO, their research people, the NASA, and with the DARPA, and they know what their user requirements. I think this is one area which needs to be pushed. I'm very happy that all the 3 services in the last 2 years have set up design coordination cells within their headquarters, and therefore that's something going to be good. We have something to learn also from the way the Navy has been handling production right independence. Indian Navy managed their own design cells. There is a naval officer sitting in every factory. In fact, they are driving the indigenization. A similar thing was attempted by the Air Force by setting up a PMT in ADA. I'm not sure how much that succeeded, because both HAL and ADA are unwilling to sort of let go their own corporate system. But certainly there is a need for much data. My next point I want to mention is there has to be some task force approach on some projects. As I said, Aero Engine is one. We have done exceedingly well in missiles because it's been a task force. We had a good joint venture in BrahMos. So there are success stories which we need to learn from and harness our strengths. I agree that there are, and DRDO, for example, in engine, we have worked on an engine for 40 years. There is great amount of data available. There are experts available. Only thing is we have to see now how we put this information to a joint venture or with a private company.
Absolutely. Gaurav, as Air Marshal mentioned that there was a Ramarao committee report before that, 15 years back, which submitted its findings, and now we have another report. And General Bipin Rawat once told me this, that everything that we need to know is already there in some committee report or the other. It's only implementation that I'm doing, and that's the one thing that needs to be done. But going ahead, Gaurav, how critical is the restructuring of the DRDO to reimagine the way we are going about defense indigenization?
No, I think it's extremely critical. They disbanded the Ordnance Factory Board, and they, there are 7 companies, etc. I happened to have dinner with these few youngsters before it was disbanded, and this was in Avadi, in Tamil Nadu, where they're making tanks and all that. So very bright, very motivated youngsters. Extremely bright, but disillusioned.
Right.
That is what happens when you take top of the shelf professionals
Yes.
and tie them and lock them up in a box.
Right.
So I think DRDO again,
Yeah.
wonderful. I've had interactions with many DRDO scientists. I think they're top of the line people. However, I think they need to be unshackled.
Yes.
You see, they need to be unshackled, and there should be structural changes. Make it a flatter organization.
Right.
Make it an organization of scientists,
Absolutely.
for scientists, by scientists.
Very good point there, Gaurav.
Yeah.
In fact, and we can't but acknowledge the fact that the DRDO has made us self-sufficient in strategic systems. When it comes to that environment where nobody will give you the technology,
Yes.
the DRDO has done fantastically well. But in other areas, we've discussed this, assault rifles and all, they shouldn't actually be there in the first place. But that brings me to the next segment of our discussion, that there are gaps in our defense capabilities, and India turns to the West for technology. And for decades, France has been India's go-to country for defense imports. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron is the chief guest at the Republic Day parade. And no other country has been given this honor as many times as France has been. And the answer is not surprising, because from submarines to fighter jets and, more importantly, engine technology, France is India's strategic partner. It's endorsed our right to test nuclear weapons in '98 and has wholeheartedly backed our claim for a permanent UNSC seat. Now, Air Marshal Chopra happens to be one of our batch of first French-trained pilots. He brought the Mirage 2000 squadron many years ago. The Mirage 2000, I must tell you, is an outstanding aircraft. It will be in service. It entered service when I was in school, Air Marshal Chopra, I must mention this, and it will continue flying long after I've retired from journalism, I guess. But this thing is, why is France so critical to India as a strategic partner?
Sandeep, I must tell you that our connection with the French primarily has been on three areas. One is, of course, aviation, which has been the main connect, then the Scorpion submarines and nuclear, and some little bit in space. These are the core areas in which we have worked with them.
Right.
And I must tell you, we got the first French fighter aircraft in 1950s, not one, two of them. The Oregon, which was called Tufani, and then we got Mystere. Both these aircraft did extremely well. Then the French, Anglo-French Jaguar came, which is the DPSA, and then of course Mirage 2000, which has been the platform of choice, whether it was in Kargil, whether it's in Balakot, and now of course the Rafale. So we have had, and of course in between the helicopters, the Elwed, the Chetak Cheetah fleet, the entire, it all, and the engines. The ALH engine is a turbomeca engine, and subsequently the Shakti engine which came out. So we have worked very, very closely with French. And the good part is no arm twisting. They are willing to give you the best protection. They're offering you exactly what they're offering to the French effort. So there is no arm twisting. But, transfer of technology is an issue not only for French, but whether it was with Russians having ahead of a Big 21 upgrade project in Russia, whether it's the Americans, whether they will give us sufficient technology in F414, or it'll just be production drawing, you cut and paste and you make the engine, is the bigger issue. But undoubtedly, French are the best Western friends that we have had when it comes to the military supplies, and this connection is very, very.
The French are the best Western partner. But Ashok, before we wind up this segment, I want to ask you, what is it that France can actually teach us about self-sufficiency in defense equipment? They were the fourth country to go completely indigenous, as far as defense equipment came. What would you learn from the French?
I think the amount of support the government gives to the industry is fantastic.
Right.
They actually will work like salesmen for the French defense industry. And they're pushing that their 1 point agenda. We are salesmen for the defense industry.
Right.
I think that is actually coming in India as of now. I feel when we go to embassies or the defense attaches, they're actually finding out what are the systems we have. They're trying to see that if that kind of unfettered support is given by a government to any industry, that industry will flourish. Absolutely. And that's happening in India at this point.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ashok, Air Marshal Chopra, and my friend Gaurav Arya. Very important insights there for Atmanirbhar Bharat and for arming Bharat. We can only hope that we implement all of these reports that we've been talking about in the last couple of months. And of course, there is a clear-cut vision for making India self-sufficient in defense equipment and indeed an exporter. That's a story we'll be tracking. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me today to talk about arming Bharat. For decades, it was said India was arming without aiming. But now things have changed. The new government policies clearly indicate a sense of purpose, direction, and urgency. We leave you with this story, the series, Arming and Aiming, on the government's drive to make us self-sufficient in defense equipment. Do watch.
News9 Plus. Download now.